what role does a museum of this kind play in society?
The most important role of the museum is the educational one. The main aim of all our efforts is to give the visitor from abroad the basic information on Zambia's past, the culture of various Zambian peoples, and the Zambian nature. However, foreign tourists constitute only a part of our visitors. Our main objectives are directed towards the Zambian visitors. Through our displays, we want to tell them something about their own country, which many have not had the possibility to learn at school. And of course, in the museum, the school children are taught in a different way and by different means what they learn in their classes. A visit to the museum is for them a valuable addition to the formal education carried on inside the school walls.
As early as 1930, the idea of collecting and preserving the material culture and crafts of the existing tribes of Zambia was conceived. Immediately, the work of collecting specimens of the traditional material culture in different parts of the country was started. Prior to 1949, the collections were kept in various buildings. By 1950, the present building, known as the Livingstone Museum, was constructed. To this original building, built in the Spanish colonial style, a modern research wing was added in 1961. The Livingstone Museum has been internationally built up as a museum depicting the activities of man. The Natural History Gallery is one of the modern galleries in the museum, with a total collection of 14,000 specimens. Of these, only a small part is exhibited. These have considerable research value, particularly in relation to the taxonomy, ecology, and the distribution of the Zambian flora and fauna. The gallery, which opened in 1969, contains the systematic collections of birds, reptiles, fishes, tortoises and turtles, as well as several dioramas showing various animals in their natural habitats. The gallery not only aims at acquainting the visitor with different animal species, but stresses the importance of protecting the wildlife for the benefit of man. Apart from the Natural History Gallery, the museum has three more galleries: the Archaeology, Ethnograph, and the History Galleries.
We have four galleries open to the public: the Prehistory, History, and Ethnography, which depict the history from the early Stone Age up to the present day and reveal the traditional culture of various peoples in Zambia. The fourth gallery is the Natural History Gallery, entitled Wildlife in Zambia, and it shows the most of Zambian animals in their natural habitat groups.
The History and Ethnography galleries depict the story of man in Zambia from the early Stone Age to the present day, and reveal the traditional culture of the different Zambian peoples. Apart from the preservation of Zambia's material cultures, the museum has other important activities, as explained by its director, Dr. Holly.
Collecting ethnographic, archaeological, and historical specimens and carrying out research into these three fields was traditionally considered to be the most important of the museum activities.
The research department's work is continuous and everlasting. Each year, the archaeologists spend 3 months in the bush in various places throughout Zambia looking for artifacts. One of these places is 40 miles northwest of Livingstone, where some of the artifacts you see in the museum are found. It has been discovered that people lived in this area some 1,200 years ago during the Iron Age. One of the vital roles a museum plays is to publish the results of its research. 2 books are already published, and the third one is underway. The books contain detailed studies of the Victoria area on Iron Age cultures which date as far back as the 5th century. These books deal with the beginning of cultures in Zambia up to the 16th century. The prehistoric section deals with the period between the 16th and 19th centuries. The most important Iron Age material has been collected from Kalambo, Isamupati, Kalundu, Ingombe Ilende, Kamangoza, and Kamadzulu. Kamadzulu is perhaps the most well-known early Iron Age settlement site in eastern, central and southern Africa. The new archaeology gallery, opened in 1969, not only surveys the development of prehistoric cultures in Zambia, but offers to the visitor basic information about the methods and techniques of archaeological research and the most important methods of dating the past, as well as the various technological processes used during the different phases of the Stone and Iron Ages. How does the Livingstone Museum compare with other museums elsewhere?
Well, the Livingstone Museum has a very high international reputation, which it acquired mainly through its research. It is particularly famous for its research into the Zambian prehistory, which was originated by Professor Clark, who was the museum's director for 18 years. With all modesty, I can say that the Livingstone Museum is not only one of the best-known museums on the African continent, but rates well even in comparison with museums in countries with a much longer museological tradition.
20% of the 100,000 visitors to the museum are foreign tourists. There are over 5,000 specimens in the museum's history collection, many of which are of unique research value.
Miss Bradshaw, as technical officer, what does your job involve in the museum?
Well, it's very varied, and it's really according to what work is in progress at the time. And when I first came to the museum, I understood it would be mostly painting, drawing, designing, lettering, and then, of course, the new gallery began, and that was really a wonderful opportunity if one is interested in sculpture, design, and in building dioramas. I'm not a taxidermist, but it has involved a branch of taxidermy and building up the diorama cases and setting the models and building the small sculptures of animals to scale, 3 feet to the inch, very small ones, and the largest one is about 6 inches in height. And now, of course, we are beginning the new history gallery. That will not be open to the public for quite a number of months.
When the specimens are brought into the museum, they have to be preserved, catalogued, properly stored, and carefully looked after. Quite a number of our staff are engaged in these activities, which the ordinary visitor to the museum has rarely a chance to see. He sees only the galleries, where we display a selected choice of our exhibits, and by their means acquaint the visitor with Zambian history, culture, and nature. The display represents the third and most important part of our activities, which of course could hardly exist without the two previous ones.
What are your main tasks at the moment?
Well, our main task at the moment is rebuilding of the existing galleries. The oldest part of the museum was opened to the public in 1950, and at that time our galleries were built. Of course, since 1950 our ideas about how a museum display should look like have changed considerably, and we just want to keep pace with this development. Our new galleries are more simple, more educative, and more attractive than the old ones. At least we want to make them more attractive, more educative, and simpler. We display less exhibits than we displayed in the old galleries, and we do not overload our cases with long descriptions and tiring labels. And I think that this is a good idea because from our experience, which we have had up to now, we know that an ordinary visitor now spends usually a longer time in the museum than he did before, and he probably learns more about what we want to tell him about Zambian history, nature, culture, and so on than he was able to learn before.
The history of the Livingstone Museum is not only the history of its collections, but the history of an intensive research which widely contributes to our present knowledge of the Zambian people and culture. The results of this research have been published by the museum. A series of occasional papers were first published in 1948 and replaced in 1967 by Zambia Museum Papers. Since 1960, the Robbins series of monographs have been published, and the series of the Livingstone Museum publications were extended by a Zambia Museum's Journal in 1969. A visitor to Livingstone and its museum will long remember the history and tradition of a truly great Zambian race.